The Jaipur BookMark reflects the core values of the publishing industry, and it brings together some of the greatest publishing professionals from around the world.
जयपुर बुकमार्क एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे कि बिजनेस को समझने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है. सो आई थिंक JBM इज़ समथिंग विच इज़ फैंटास्टिक एंड पीपल हु डोंट नो अबाउट इट, उनको आना चाहिए, उनको इसका हिस्सा बनना चाहिए.
Jaipur BookMark. Come and celebrate literature, meet authors, agents, publishers. Join us at the Jaipur BookMark.
In these times during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.
On behalf of our festival directors, advisors, and my colleagues at Team Vikas, we welcome you to the 6th Festival Directors Roundtable of 2021. Jaipur BookMark is an important B2B segment aimed at developing and nurturing the business of books and literary and arts festivals across the world. JBM has hosted a Festival Directors Roundtable every year for the past 4 years, where festival directors from around the world exchange ideas on how festivals continue to forefront the fight for freedom of expression and ideas. They share their stories, challenges, and learnings in the fight to protect this much-needed space. Over 100 festival directors from around 27 countries have been part of the Festival Directors Roundtable in the past years. This year, the digital medium has offered us the opportunity of hosting the entire series around that. We present today Unbox the Festival. Anomaa, Rajakaruna, Elin Gruffydd Jones, Ilkay Freund, Nick Barley, and Vilis Kasims in conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy. Anomaa is the festival director of the internationally renowned Auckland Writers Festival, which presents a 6-day, 170-plus event program of international and local writers each May, drawing attendance of up to 85,000 people. Responsible for the artistic content of the festival, as well as its operational management, she joined the organization in 2011 and has curated 11 programs to date, including a live event in 2021. Anne has a degree in English literature and is a trained journalist with broad professional experience in both the public and private sectors. She is also a trustee of the literary grants organization, the Matatuhi Foundation, a member of the advisory board of the UK-based Foundation for New Zealand and Australian Arts, and the board chair of the New Zealand charity Everybody Eats, which feeds people 3-course restaurant meals made from food that would otherwise go to waste on a pay-as-you-feel model. Our next speaker, Anomaa Rajakaruna, is the festival director of Jaffna International Cinema Festival and founder of Agenda 14 Short Films Festival in Sri Lanka. She curated 11 editions of European Film Festival in Sri Lanka and has served a juror at over 20 national and international film festivals. Elin Gruffydd Jones is a professor of linguistic diversity at the University of Wales Trinity St. David and director of University of Wales Centre for Advanced Welsh and Celtic Studies, an internationally renowned research centre. She directs the work of Wales Literature Exchange and contributes to the activities of literature across frontiers. She is chair of Cymru Theatre Arwyd Kosh, which specializes in theatre for young audiences and hosts a biennial international festival. She's a board member of the National Eisteddfod Board of Wales and currently supervising a research project on the festival's international and digital strategies. Ilkay Freund is the director of the International House of Literature Porta and of the Biennial Porta Festival in Europe's capital. She has been working as a literary program maker in Brussels since 2002. She has extensive experience as an editor and worked as a literary critic for Belgian Dutch-speaking Radio 1 and was a member of the jury of various literary prizes in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Europe. She is a member of the General Assembly of the Arts Development Organization, of the Reading Promotion Organization, and a board member of the Brussels Arts Organization and Bronx Theatre for Young Audiences. In 2018, she was appointed Arts and Humanities Fellow of the Bridge University, Brussels. Nick Barley is a publisher, editor, and festival organizer. He has been director and chief executive of the Edinburgh International Book Festival since 2009 and has judged a variety of literary and cultural prizes, including the 2017 Man Booker International Prize. In 2018, he became a trustee of the Booker Prize Foundation. In the same year, Barley was awarded a Chevalier of the Order of Merit by the French government for service to literature and became an honorary fellow of the Royal Society for Literature. Vilis Kasims is a Latvian author, translator, and editor. He has translated more than 15 books from English and Russian and published 2 books himself. As an editor, he works for the Punctum magazine, including the annual Punctum Literature Festival, which has received several awards in Latvia, including one for the Literary Event of the Year. In conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy. Sanjoy is the entrepreneur of the arts, is the managing director of Teamwork Arts, producers of the Jaipur Literature Festival, and JLF 25 other across the world, and is the founder trustee of Salam Balak Trust, providing support services for street and working children in Delhi. Roy works closely with various industry bodies and the government on policy issues in the cultural sector in India, and has lectured and collaborated with international universities. All these virtual roundtables will be available to view on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. But before we begin, may I please invite the festival co-director Namita Gokhale to say a few words. Namita Gokhale is an award-winning writer and festival director. She is the author of 11 works of fiction and has written extensively on myth as well as the Himalayan region. Her acclaimed debut novel, Paro, Dreams of Passion, was published in 1984. Her recent Jaipur Journals, published in 2020, was set against the backdrop of the vibrant Jaipur Literature Festival. Betrayed by Hope, a play on the life of Michael Madhusudan Dutt, was also published in 2020. The forthcoming novel, The Blind Matriarch, is her 20th book. A co-founder and co-director of the Jaipur Literature Festival, Gokhale is committed to supporting translations and curating literary dialogues across languages and cultures. She has conferred the prestigious Centenary National Award for Literature by the Assam Sahitya Sabha in 2017 and has won various other literary awards. Namita, over to you.
Dear friends of literature, it's an honor and a privilege to welcome all of you festival wallahs from places far and near to discuss the challenges and the learnings of the last year. Literature is an anchor and a compass, and literature festivals hold together the community of writers and readers. They make books and ideas accessible across cultures and continents. The Jaipur BookMark and Festival Directors Roundtable reach out to seek and share our conjoined experiences, our observations, our intuitions, our strategies and hard-learned lessons at this moment of enormous change and accelerated new opportunities. I look forward to listening in and learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suraj, and thank you, Namita, for the opening remarks. I'm going to actually go straight to Nick. Nick has taken time out of the ongoing festival to be with us. He's going to have to jump off very quickly, so I'm going to ask him a couple of questions, and then we will continue as a conversation. Just a warning to everybody, when you put your messages out to everyone, it also goes out live. So if you're sending a message, just send it to each other rather than to everyone. Nick, thank you. I mean, how have you escaped? How did you escape the festival and join us? This is amazing. Give us a sense of what's happening there in Edinburgh. We'd love to be there, but we're not. So give us a sense of that.
First of all, let me just turn my screen around and I hope I can show you Edinburgh's castle, which is just outside the window from the space where I'm zooming from. So Edinburgh, of course, remains a beautiful city, but this year it is a very, very impoverished festival, smaller, and it's trying to recover itself as a festival city. Normally 1 million people arrive in Edinburgh. This year, a few thousand people have come from outside the city, and it's a very small affair. Nevertheless, it's very busy, and the Fringe and the International Festival and the Book Festival are all staging events predominantly for people in the city. And so what we're trying to do is to say, we are still here, we are still alive. And to ask our audiences, do we still matter? And can we still make ourselves meaningful in this post-COVID era? And I think that's really our challenge for all festivals. How can we find a way to be meaningful now, after all we've been through?
Nick, how are you programming, considering you don't really know anymore who you're programming to? Are you programming for a digital audience? Are you programming for a live audience? How do you get your mix right?
Yeah, this is the other question we're facing this year, the question of how to be hybrid. And there we've got a hybrid festival in the sense of audiences. We've got theatres which have got live audiences here, but which also have online audiences. But we're also hybrid in terms of our participants. We've got authors currently on stage at the moment is Andrew O'Hagan, Scottish author, speaking in front of a live audience. But later on this afternoon, we will have an author coming in from New York who will be speaking on a big screen to a live audience. So we're trying to work out what works, what people like and what people don't like, both in terms of audiences and in terms of author participants. For me this year, the question is how to do it. And when we find a way, in future years, we roll out hybridity in the best way we can. And we should learn from each other. I'll tell you what works for me, and I hope that you will all share also what works and what does not work for you.
No, totally. And in fact, these rounds of festival director meetings are exactly for that, for us to learn of each other and to help each other sort of overcome this new scenario. But a quick last question before you run away, Nick, is that, because you're in many ways, and it's certainly been true for us, we've been programming for audiences that we haven't seen or haven't even realized are our audiences. In Jaipur now, our third largest international audience is from Germany, and our fourth is from Japan. Very different from what it used to be when we were on the ground. Has that changed the way that you've had to curate your program?
Absolutely. And like Jaipur, we also have an extraordinarily international audience now, thanks to our work over the past year. Previously, we had an extraordinarily international author community who came to Edinburgh, but the audience tended to be from Scotland, from the UK, and a small proportion of international tourists. Last year, our audience was over 50% from outside the UK. And our audiences were huge in the USA, in Australia, in Southeast Asia, and so on. So it does change what we're trying to do. It changes the nature of the festival. But we also have to remember that we are from here. We are a festival based in Edinburgh, in the north of Europe, where it rains a lot and where we have a castle outside the window. And we try to make a festival which has the spirit of Edinburgh in its DNA. So we don't become a kind of globalized, internationalized, homogenized festival. And that we can be different, deliciously different, from Passa, Porta, or from Auckland, or from Jaipur.
And given that the world has changed, or at least the world that we knew has changed, and given that the world is changing faster than many of us can keep track of, look at Afghanistan and what's happening there. Is it a responsibility for festivals like ourselves, spread across everywhere from Australia through to the United States? Is there a responsibility for our festivals to make sense? Well, do we have a responsibility in reflecting the new changes?
We absolutely do. I think good festivals listen as well as presenting. Good festivals are spaces for public dialogue, public discourse, where the audiences are participants and not just passive viewers. And therefore, if we don't talk about these subjects, I expect our audiences will. And so therefore, to me, it's about listening and learning and working out together what our future holds and where our future lies. And I think good programming will be programming which allows people the space to think things through together and ask themselves, who are we now? Where have we come from? What have we learned? And what can we do in the future, which is a way for our society to be? And that might be different in New Zealand, and it might be different in other countries from Scotland. And that's why we still need festivals here and all over the world as well. It will not do to have a kind of Netflix, Amazon international festival with only one perspective. The multiple perspectives are necessary.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
So Nick, we're going to let you go. Is any message from Edinburgh to us and everybody watching? All of us would have loved to have been there, but
what I would say, Sanjoy, is I'm incredibly in awe of any festival organizer working at the moment, and the courage that you are displaying is incredible. But I would also say that now is the time where more courage is needed. At this time when it's hard, we have to experiment, we have to try new things. These are the moments when it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to have problems, because this is when we can learn. In 2 years' time, we will have to be getting it right again. Absolutely everything right, like we normally do. So now's the time to try new things. I saw your program, which was launched recently, a very impressive international program. How many people were able to actually come to New Zealand for that?
We had no open borders, actually. So the thing about New Zealand is that we have been, up till last week, absolutely open in terms of live audience. You can sit cheek to jowl. You can have 2,000 people in a room. You don't have to wear a mask, but the borders are completely closed. Yeah. So we kind of did we found a few internationals hiding out here, people like Neil Gaiman, which was very useful, Manta Palmer, Rick Jakoski. So we found some people who were here. We then picked a few very bespoke digital things to do, Ishiguro, Ai Weiwei, although we had some digital issues with that, and a few salons. And then everything else was local, because I think one of the interesting things, I guess for each of us, we have to ask the question about what our festival is and what its kind of key mission is, or kaupapa, as we would say in New Zealand. And for us, the key has always been to promote New Zealand writers. And one of the interesting things about a COVID environment is actually we have all been forced back to some degree to the local, to our own stories, to our own communities, to support what's going on there. So the vast majority of our program was actually New Zealanders. And I think the nicest thing about it was that once that festival got underway, I don't think anyone felt like they were having a lesser festival experience, even though we did not have 50 internationals as we would normally have. I think they just felt they were having a festival, and they were very excited to do so. So I think that probably for us raises some questions in the future about how many internationals we would bring in once those borders open. I think we'll go back to some, but I'm not sure we'll ever go back to that same scale, because I think we've sort of rebalanced the sort of the makeup of who we need to kind of give our audience a sustaining experience.
Yeah, I must say that we've found exactly the same thing, that there's a desire to enjoy the local, and certainly the local authors that we've staged have been incredibly popular. They're always popular. They've been especially popular this year with our audiences in the festival that's taking place at the moment. But whilst we're waiting for Sanjoy, I've been asked by the organisers in the chat room to play some sections of a short video I made, which illustrates the hybrid technology that we're using here at Edinburgh. I made it a few days ago. And so whilst we're waiting for Sanjoy to return, I perhaps now might be a time, because I'm afraid I have to leave in a minute and be on stage. Would you like to play, and then I can talk about it when the videos run. Just play a few minutes of it, if you would.
So here we are at the Edinburgh College of Art, the new site for the book festival this year. As you can see, it's something of a building site, as we are 3 or 4 days out from the launch of the festival. But what you can see is something coming together rather special, a new kind of festival, a hybrid festival which will work both live and online. So I'm going to take you inside now into the main building of the Edinburgh College of Art, where we'll see some of the theatres in the space. Here we are. Audiences will enter through here. This year, socially distanced at 1 metre distance. You can see the audience bank over here. And on the stage in front of me, authors can either join live or online. Let's get up on stage and have a look. Dave, do you want to join me on stage? And, here we are. Interviewers will sit here, and they may have an author on stage with them, in which case they can interview in the traditional way in front of a live audience. However, there may well be author participants coming in online as well, and they'll be presented on the big screen that we have here. But crucially, interviewers will be able to see on the monitor in front of them, although you can't see it currently on the monitor, they'll be able to see the participants who are coming in remotely. So instead of having to turn away from the live audience to speak to the screen, they can speak to their interviewee on the monitor ahead of them. And behind each of the monitors, there's another camera which allows me to look into the monitor and also look into the camera. Now, let's just have a look at the different things we've got here. We've got 3 cameras in front of the stage, which are remotely controlled by the vision mixing desk. We've also got 2 camera-operated cameras. You can see over there, there's a camera operator working for us. And we'll have another camera operator operating on one of these gimbal Steadicams. And that camera operator will be able to move around the space. So if I, as the interviewer, decide to come off the stage and stand here and talk to the audience, the gimbal can follow me. And if I want to jump up into the audience and speak to somebody in the audience here, I can do so, and the gimbal can follow. If there are questions from the audience, the gimbal comes through and we can put the microphone onto the audience questioner. But equally, we can bring in questions from online, which will come in to the interviewer on a tablet computer. So we can alternate from questions from the audience in Texas or Toronto or Tennessee, and also questions from the audience right here in Edinburgh. And this sculpture court at the Edinburgh College of Art is traditionally one of the grandest spaces in the ECA building, and we've turned it into a state-of-the-art studio. Alongside, just down the road, there's another theatre as well. I'm going to take you in there now. Follow me. Look at these lovely sculptures. Here you can see some of the ventilation equipment, which will suck air out of the space during the course of the events, making sure that people can breathe clean air throughout the whole event, keeping them safe. This is the Baillie Gifford West Court Theatre, the second of our theatre spaces. And once again, here we are. Hi guys, sorry to interrupt. Here you can see, once again, the large screen in action, which can have any number of different pictures on it, from a still picture such as this to an incredibly high resolution film, and we'll be showing many films as part of the events. And this is all thanks to Dave and Andy, our technical producers, who've imagined this system into shape. I'm so proud of what they've done. Now, let's go and have a look at one last studio, which is the Castle View Studio. And this is the Castle View Studio, which allows us to have events in the online only, which should be filmed with a pretty special backdrop. And this backdrop, of course, is Edinburgh's castle. Here, interviewers can sit, and with the right angle from this camera here, you can see a wonderful backdrop of Edinburgh Castle. So I can say, welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival, coming to you from Edinburgh. And that picture of Edinburgh remains in the shot throughout as the interviewer is interviewing somebody from further afield. Here we have the streaming crew, Glowcast, the Glowcast team, who get the pictures, the images through from all the different studios, 3 different studios, comes into the system here and gets turned into a number of different channels which get sent out to our streaming platform that we've built so it can be broadcast online. This is a really crucial part of the setup, and it includes not only a channel for each of the theatres, but different channels for live captioning and for British Sign Language captioning. So here you can see the channel which will have the live subtitles, live captions for the events. And we'll just nip through here to show you the British Sign Language Interpretation Studio. Here we have the green screen, which allows the BSL interpreter. I don't speak BSL, so I can't do it, but you can imagine that they will be interpreting in front of the green screen, and you may be able to just see on the monitor down there how we can see the camera operator as well in the picture, but that the BSL interpreter appears on the screen if you decide you'd like to choose that particular. I'm not sure if it's light enough to capture it on the camera, but look down here. When you're looking down at the stage from up here, you can see live captioning, which will be appearing on the screen in front of the stage. You don't have to look at that if you don't want to. You can just look at the stage. But for those people who need to be able to read what's being said on stage, we've got that additional live captioning facility. Just another of the ways in which we're making this festival accessible to as many people as possible.
Thank you, Nick, for that wonderful video. And we'll let you go. We know that you're already running late. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much. Your contribution to the session was incredible. So thank you so much. Let me come to you, Elin, and ask you that how you coped in the last year with the whole drama of the pandemic. How you managed and how you coped?
Well, thanks very much for the invitation to be here. I'm actually a board member, so I have to just thank the staff who've been so fantastic to get the show on the road, you know, with all the difficulties. The Eisteddfod's an annual festival. It's an 8-day multi-art festival. And it attracts audiences of around 150, 180,000 per year. Some years even more than that. The year it was hosted in Cardiff, we had 500,000 visitors. Now, I mentioned the year that we held it in Cardiff specifically because it is a festival that is produced, co-produced, co-curated by a different geographical community in Wales every year. So we go from north to south every other year, but also we go to different locations. So it's not just using two venues, but we create a new venue every year. So that has been the real difficulty as well, because clearly we've just heard from Nick about Edinburgh. At least he knows where his festival is going to take place every year. Ours changes location, and it's a 2 to 3 year project to co-produce and co-curate the festival with the local community. So it's a pretty complex operation. And I mean, the staff have been absolutely fantastic. It's a very small core staff, but also we work with other organizations, other professionals, but also we work very, very closely with the community. So all in all, it's co-curated by hundreds and hundreds of people in the end. And then what happened last year was, of course, that we had to hold it all online at very, very short notice. This year, of course, there was a lot of insecurity about and uncertainty, knowing what we'd be able to do online and what we'd be able to do face to face. And as I was saying, we create the space that we use as well, because we don't always use buildings that exist. You know, we build the sites as well. So clearly, you know, when you're constructing the venue as well, because it's very often held in fields, you know, and then we bring the pavilions in, it requires such a longer lead in order to be able to host the event. So this year, we had a very close collaboration with the broadcasting sector, as we always have. and also we were able to host some sort of small events as well with live audiences. And a core part of the Eisteddfod as well is the competitive element. So we have hundreds of competitions as well alongside the curated events. We have around 800 events that we curate, and also there are events that other organisers who participate in our festival that they then curate as well. So there are too many things to go to. You know, the offer, the program is really vast. So this year we were able to introduce the competitive element, so reintroduce some of the competitions. And then, because we're a multi-art festival, some of those competitions might be choral singing, socially distanced. Some might be prose, poetry competitions. We host the most prestigious poetry and prose competitions in the Welsh language every year. And so we were able to reintroduce those this year too. So it's been a very, very difficult challenge, but I think that on the whole, last year and this year, we've seen a huge positive response to what we've managed to put together and reached really far and wide. Again, using a language, the Welsh language, because that's the language of all our content, using a language that's spoken by around 500,000 people, 700,000, 800,000 people, but we've managed to reach audiences across the world as well. And very often we do have people from different countries coming to visit the Eisteddfod, but I think that what we've managed to do in creating a digital event is we've been able to bring in people from different parts to participate as audience and as contributors. And we have a digital legacy. We have digital assets that we've been able to produce over the past two festivals. And that's something that is really enriching for the future for us.
Right, that's wonderful. I think, unpredictability and adaptability were the two key words in the last 1.5 years. But on that note, I think Sanjoy is back. Welcome back, Sanjoy. And
don't go away. Knowing the internet connection, I may well disappear. Let me just do a follow-up question to Elin. Literature across frontiers is something that you've been associated with. And in many ways, what you've been doing with the Welsh Language Festival is really crossing across frontiers. With this new digital paradigm shift that we're all in today, how do you see, I'm going to use the word secluded languages. I mean, languages with very small numbers of people. How do you see this impacting on languages like French? Or I was asking our colleagues in Norway, for example, where, they have a state policy which uses NORAD uses its languages and uses many festivals to be able to get their languages out. How do you see this impacting? How do you see digital impacting, these smaller languages?
Yeah, I mean, our festival takes place in Welsh. Welsh is the stage language for all events. So if it's singing, or if it's poetry, or if it's theatre in the festival, rock music, opera, everything. So Welsh is the language that's used for all the cultural events or if it's political debate, everything. And that's the core mission. That's the USP of the festival. It is right at the core of its mission and its values. And one of the things that's so important about the way that the festival has been organized over the past century or so is that it has a linguistic impact in the area where it's hosted, because we move from place to place. And so it allows people to come together to have a really immersive experience in the language. Now, for people who speak languages, for people who speak dominant languages, maybe people don't appreciate that real special value that you have in this kind of context. We curate rock concerts where you have 2,000 to 3,000 young people, generally young people there, you know, and during the course of the week, there are 4, 5, 6 of these that happen. Now, that is an experience that those young people will not have in Welsh at any other time of the year, you know. So when we move from being a physical festival to becoming an online festival, I think one of the things that we lose sometimes is that we lose that sense of being part of a big community, a wide audience, being in a huge crowd, you know, that buzz of being in a huge crowd. We lose that when we go online. But on the other hand, we can reach people. We can reach people who have less mobility. We can reach people who live in other parts of the world who can't travel. And there is a wide community of speakers of Welsh and people who want to have that connection with Welsh culture living in different parts of the world. But clearly, we come together with that mission of using the language for everything, for all the events. But it is that balance, you know, and we want to go back to being a physical festival, because that is really part of the buzz. But we will probably continue to do a lot of the digital things and draw in the international elements as well through that.
And Elin talked about using the language. So in faraway New Zealand, in Auckland, do you see using the language of our new digital world, has it sort of liberated you? And if it has, how do you make it different from, say, any other festival that you compete with in Australia or in New Zealand? Hasn't it that now we have access to all the same authors? We're all doing Margaret Atwood's and Oran Pamuk's. They're in all our festivals because it's easy to access. So how do you make, in your curation, how do you make that USP different? And how do you preserve, as Elin said, in a different way, how do you create a new language?
Well, I mean, I'm probably the maverick in this room because I don't think that digital is the future. I think digital is a very useful tool, and we have always used digital. We have captured a lot of our content on film and in audio, and I think actually literary festivals in particular lend themselves best to audio rather than pictures. It's not that interesting to watch two people speak to each other. But I actually don't think that's the power of what our festival does. The power of what our festival does and what Elin refers to is bringing people into a space and actually engaging them with a conversation that happens in the moment. And there is an energy about that which animates the program. And so we did incorporate a little bit of digital content. There's PR value in having international writers. There's obviously key conversations you want to incorporate. But our curation is very much about the people who can come and the conversations that grow around them. And that's always been the case. There have always been writers who've said, I'm not going to get on a plane, or just had a baby, or I'm doing whatever. And, you know, you think, oh, my goodness, I won't have a festival without them. And then someone else says, yes, I will come. And actually the festival grows its own shape. So for me, digital is a very useful tool in a complicated moment. It's certainly a way of capturing what we're doing and sharing it more broadly. But the festival delivery is very committed to being live, actually. And that is our USP, I think, in the current climate. Because, as you say, there is a wealth of digital content out there from around the world. I mean, we're all creating it. It's out there. People can access it. What can we do that no one else can do? And that is put people in a live space, in a New Zealand framework, in the moment, and create a conversation that really resonates. So I'm sticking with live, actually.
What has been fascinating for me about New Zealand, more so in recent times, because we've been very engaged with the New Zealand's High Commissioner here to India, David, and some of your writers in Christchurch, Nick Lowe. And I was fascinated at the different kind of dialects that the different tribes across New Zealand have. How do those resonate in your festival? And because it's such a oral tradition, and it's such a physical, I mean, digitally and of course in your live festival.
I've kind of missed a little bit of that question, but let me respond. I mean, Te Reo Māori, which does have dialectical differences, but unlike Australia, does have a core language actually that is generally understood throughout the country, is one of the official languages of the country, and therefore it is embedded in our programming. So, you know, we have a Māori name, we translate various sessions into Māori in the print program. We actually deliver at least one session a year entirely in Te Reo Māori. We did that with simultaneous translation this year. So we weave the language through and we embrace the culture through, particularly we have a series of curators that we invite to come work. So programming by Māori, for Māori, the conversations they want to have, the writers from those communities that they want to bring to a wider audience. So it's actually fundamental to us, that language. Live or digital doesn't matter. It's actually just part of the fabric of how we communicate with our audience as a way of reflecting who we are in New Zealand, which is a bicultural country. Yeah.
Fascinating. Anomaa, coming to you, you've never had a problem about the language because you're a film festival based in Jaffna. But given the history of what's happened in the recent past in Jaffna and in the mainland, how is your festival morphed, or how is your festival addressed some of the issues that you continue to face in places like Jaffna?
You cannot say that we didn't have a language problem, because very first thing I would like to address is in Sri Lanka that there are two local languages, Sinhala and Tamil. And in Jaffna, it's a Tamil speaking area, and in the south, the capital Colombo and all, mainly it's a Sinhalese speaking area. So running an international festival, sometimes, yes, we have a linked language, mainly it's English, but then our audience is mainly Tamil speaking audience. It's not only the local Tamil speaking audience, because mainly Jaffna festival has a focus on the peninsula Jaffna itself. And one of the objectives was to, because we were into a almost like 3-decade-long war and armed conflict. The war ended in 2019, but no war, but I could say no peace also. So that when there was a transitional justice process was lagging, so running a festival, and one of the key objectives was to create a dialogue between the two communities who were into kind of armed conflict. And then there's a language barrier, because it's mainly the Sinhala speaking audience from the south and the Tamil speaking audience from the north. So creating a physical space for these two groups to have a kind of a dialogue while watching a film, opening up discussions, meeting each other. It was more about healing, addressing the issues, healing the wounds, kind of. But then on the other hand, because of the close proximity of Jaffna to physically to Kerala, and the language link, the common language between Tamil Nadu and the Northern Peninsula, there are so many links. So in a way, Jaffna Film Festival focus on these connectivities. The Tamil language films we bring in from the south of India and other Dravidian languages, especially Malayalam and Kannada and Telugu, and then bringing the films from the Europe as well as people from the south. So there's always a language barrier between the two communities, and we were heavily depending on translators, simultaneous translations with the equipment. So in a way, right now, going for a hybrid format because of the pandemic, one of the key issues that we face is that we are losing the physical ground, like, this meeting place for all these people. because it's a meeting place for everybody who were part of this long conflict. There was Indian peacekeeping forces in Sri Lanka in the north, so there was an Indian connectivity and Indian related issues, and then the Sri Lankan government, armed forces from the south. So the community affected by the war. So we are losing that physical ground, and then going digitally and with the linked language only, that we are losing kind of part of the audience also, depending on the language you use. So it's a language is a main issue. But on the other hand, there's a big diaspora outside. So in a way, during this time, going for a hybrid format, we have managed to reach audiences across the globe. So that is also one good thing which happened with the hybrid format, but it's challenging times. We have to face that. We have in a way experimented, because normally Jaffna International Cinema Festival is a 5 to 6 days long activity with 60 to 100 films being screened. So last year we experimented with a extended physical programming schedule, which was spread out during 3 months, having opening the space for 3 months and facing the situation where assessing, monitoring the possibility of having physical screenings, working with the health authorities closely, and doing short programs, sometimes a weekend program, then 2 weeks that we will not be able to present anything. So that also one of the formats we experimented, because for us, this physical keeping the physical space open, even for a certain percentage, was very important.
So, Anomaa, tell me, in terms of curation and, in your last government, things had opened up, there was peace and reconciliation, people were addressing some of the war crimes, etc. And then now everything has changed again. Has this been reflected in your film festival, in your curation? Have you had to change some of the content that you used to curate earlier over the last few years?
Actually, when it comes to censorship and issues in Sri Lanka, that, there were a lot of issues people discussed. But fortunately, when it comes to an international festival, that we have a public performances board. Even for an international festival, that we have to go through the approval of the board. But maybe because it's a limited audience, and maybe because it's an international event, we were lucky to work closely with the public performances board, not through only last government and this government, but throughout, because our festival is now we are into the 7th year, but before that we had the European Film Festival, and we had other curated small festivals presented even in Jaffna. I have been curating for the last, I think, 16, 17 years. So I have been with different boards at the Public Performance Board. Nothing has changed much, but because basically it's a special event. It's a special event for a limited audience. I think that's the way that it's different from addressing for unlimited audiences, a commercial release of a film. But we have had other, as when it comes to curation, we have had other issues, mainly related to when you have a festival, especially in a conflict-affected area in the far north, we are 350 kilometers away from the capital. 350 kilometers in another developed country may not be a long distance, but here, this connectivity and the distance is far. So that in a way, the people look at this festival as what is this platform, who are behind this, and like trying to understand, like, trying to make connections politically also. Politically, in the sense, it's not about the ruling party or everybody. Like, everybody's looking at it, trying to label, looking at the program, the curation of a particular year. So every year that we had issues like, whether it is people trying to make, whether there's an Indian connection, whether it's a Sri Lankan government, the Southern agenda, or like, whether there's a right-wing agenda. So always trying to, but we try to accommodate everything and all views. And we have had many issues, but then so far what I have understood is negotiations help, because 1 year, that was the year that I. Daniel Blake, Ken Loach's film, won in Cannes Film Festival, and Jaffna Festival managed to get the Asian premiere of the film immediately after the Cannes Film Festival. And when we were about to open the festival with the film, that there was a hartal in the peninsula, and we have announced, and we were about to open the festival. So there were people coming, trying to. So we managed to somehow negotiate. And even like I can remember that there were a lot of problems for the festival. We managed to find another soft opening with the Lebanese film Void, which had a connection to the, in a way that there was a parallel issues between Void and what was happening in Jaffna. So we managed to tackle the issues. And few years, 2 years ago, we had another issue like with a film where that the community was protesting against one film. Because of that we had to withdraw the film, because it was not because of the mainly not because of the content of the film, but it had a connection, but it was a statement given by the filmmaker to a television channel, and the community was protesting. So it's always when it comes to freedom of expression that we have to question who's and whatever. But to address your issue regarding censorship, so far, actually, I have to give credit to the Sri Lankan Public Performances Board for international festivals. It was very open negotiation. So far, nothing was censored.
Let me ask Ilke, Anomaa talked about the politics of festivals, or the politics of culture. You're in the heart of Europe, and the European Union's primary position is how can they brand the European Union as one. In Porta, you've obviously got one of the most difficult jobs, with so many different countries having to be reflected. How do you manage, and how do you look at this, so many countries as one? And do you have to balance one country against the other? How do you program?
I think it's a difficult job, but it's a difficult job for all of us, and it's a difficult job for the audience as well. And it's good that we all come together through our festivals. Actually, Brussels is a city with many faces. So it's a city for people who are linked to the EU. It's a city, it's officially a bilingual city. So that means it's people from the Dutch-speaking community, but also the French-speaking community who live here and are politically represented here. And it's also a city of people from Brussels who perhaps arrived here recently, stay here for some time and move on again. So it's a multi-layered city. We have no obligation towards the EU. We're not sponsored by the, not directly sponsored by the EU, but we do take responsibility in a sense that we want to bring all these, ideally, we try to bring all these audiences together. And we do that, of course, by choosing topics that are relevant to audiences and writers at this day and age. But also to have the languages represented as much as possible, and different opinions expressed in these languages. So it's an intricate It's an integrated program of different events with different writers, of course, in different languages, and often several languages, for example, Dutch and French, or French and English, in one program at the same moment. And normally seen, it's one weekend, but it's a biannual festival, the Passa Porta International Festival of Literature. And it took place March this year, and that was the third wave of COVID here in Belgium. So we were obliged to do it completely digitally, although we had hoped to have an audience, to welcome an audience in our theaters, and that is an element that we just really kept, that we thought was very precious. In going to the digital, we still wanted to have a sort of experience of coming to Brussels, going to the theaters, and we worked with 7 big theaters in Brussels where we staged events. So people were, even digitally, were able to go into the Royal Opera, into an edgy theater for a young audience, established theater. So this element we really wanted to have. So we kept some of the elements of the live event, but we also, of course, we had to go completely digital.
Ilke, migration and identity, again, what Anomaa was talking about, Anne and Elin, migration and identity have become some of the big issues across the European Union countries, literally across, and that's obviously also led to a great deal of friction. If you look at Hungary and Poland, and of course now more so even in France and Germany, how does a festival like Passa Porta sort of reflect this?
Sure, I think it's an interesting one, and of course this is a major topic, as are other topics. And what we did as a festival for this edition, but also for previous editions, is asking writers, because they have such a unique position. They retreat from the world. They stay away for several months, years sometimes, to reflect on topics they think are really important to spend all this time on and then share it with their readers. So it goes for the topic of migration, but it also goes on discrimination, on power, ecology. There's so many topics that are really important and that require that reflection, and that we want to share the result of that reflection, because wonderfully formulated or poignantly formulated in literature. So this is, of course, what we want to do as a literary festival. What we did specifically for the edition in March was decide on a theme, which we haven't done before, and the theme was "The Author is Present." And it was a sort of tongue-in-cheek theme, because we had no idea if the author really could be present. But we invited a lot more, but we asked 7 prominent writers to write a text for us about something that really concerned them. And so the topic of migration certainly was one of the text that was, one of the texts was written on topic of migration, but there were other texts on the difficult situation of women and power. There were texts written on loneliness. So they were really poignant, strong text written, and we got a text. And so some of the writers were able to come and read their text for an audience, digital audience, and some weren't able to come, but we had a text. And that was a really wonderful element. And it really brought the audience together as well, because it's mainly, first of all, through text that we are in touch with the writers.
Vilis, can you all hear me? Am I back? Yeah. Vilis, I was asking, Latvia, beautiful country, lots of writing that's happening there. How do you see the role of any festival or any publisher in a place like Latvia? Is it to get the word of the Latvian writer out to the world, or is it to bring the world to Latvia and see how different languages and different knowledge aspects can influence a small community like the Latvian nation?
Yeah, I think it's primarily the latter, because, as you said, Latvia is quite a small country, but with a rich culture and a lot of writers working at the moment. And so these festivals, in particular ours, I think, but not only, serve to me and to maybe other writers primarily as a perfect opportunity for authors, for people involved in literature to come together and mix and exchange ideas, and also to get and to have an encounter with the outside world, which otherwise in other events that happen that take place in Latvia are often absent, or if it is present, it's unfortunately often dominated by the Anglo-Saxon world, in particular, obviously, the United States. So for us, having a festival is a great opportunity to bring writers from other countries with other languages that the Latvian authors might, due to not knowing languages like Danish or Italian, to have them come here and to be able to talk with them after the events as well. And it's part of, I would say, building a literary community here and expanding it and bringing some fresh air to it.
And in a place like Latvia, when you do a festival or when you do a series of readings, do you have conversations that cross outside of the political and socio-economic situation in Latvia? Or is it pretty much about the country and the people there? Or is there a sense that, let's talk about Afghanistan or Syria or Libya or Sri Lanka or the war crimes? Because Latvia in many ways is quite an insular, landlocked country.
Yeah, this is something that comes up every year when we discuss the possible programming of the next year. But partly due to funding reasons, we're tying each festival to a Latvian author or something important to Latvia, because otherwise it would be difficult to get funding as well. But what we're trying to do, for instance, this year, one of our main guests is a Russian researcher, scholar of melancholy, in particular in post-Soviet countries, Alexander Atkin. And we're having him over and we're discussing the whole of post-Soviet space and how the countries have tried to overcome the history, the common history that they have, and how does that reflect in writing both in Latvia and in Russia and other post-Soviet countries. So we're not necessarily crossing borders as widely as some of the other festivals in here, but we are trying to look for some common ground. Also in discussions with authors from other countries, inevitably I think conversation loops back to the differences and commonalities in the current environment in our countries, and especially in literary scene, and what influences the literary scene in Latvia or in other countries.
And I'm just going to go across the room, quick closing comment, but let me ask you a somewhat bizarre but gender sensitive question. Do festival directors who are women program quite differently than festival directors who are men?
Goodness, I don't have the faintest idea. I'm trying to think about how many men there are programming festivals. Nick's there. I don't think so. I mean, I think that the curatorial eye is not gender specific. I think each curator has their own kind of sense of the conversations and the threads that they want to explore. But I'm not sure that that arranges itself on gender lines. I think it's about geography and community and engagement across borders and those things. But I don't know. What do you think? That's an intriguing question.
I was having a conversation just before this one with the new EIF board, where they're looking at, a replacement. And this is one of the things that I talked about, women festival directors have a sense of empathy. Now, how does that reflect into programming? Let's ask Elin. Elin, do you feel that it reflects?
Well, most of our team, most of our professional team are women. The chief executive of the Eisteddfod is a woman, and the artistic director and the deputy artistic director, and also head of comms. They're all women. But our festival, I think, as well, is our festival is co-curated by the community, and also follows a lot of the events follow the wishes of various committees and so on. And what we've had, of course, over the years is an overdominance of the male view of the world, the male view of culture, and men being overrepresented in past in the past programs, at least. Now we're seeing a much more diverse way of curating, but we're also seeing more diversity in terms of how our different visible diversities are reflected in what we present. We had a big project in the last year, 2020, with signing with the BSL version of the Welsh national anthem. We're working much more closely to make sure that we reflect the ethnic minorities in Wales, that we have that we're not all white faces and so on, so that young musicians who come from an ethnic minority background, who are Welsh speaking, that they're given that prominence and so on. So we're working really closely to make sure that we reflect the true diversity of our community across Wales. And the chair of our board is a Punjabi speaker as well. He's Ashok. He learned Welsh as an adult, and that's also a very, very important part of our linguistic mission, is that we open up the Welsh language to people who are learning the language, as well as people who've been educated in it, or who've grown up speaking it in families and in communities and so on. So it's about reflecting more diversity and empowering more diversity in the programming as well.
Sanjoy, can I just say one other thing there? It seems to me, as a provocation, that the arts and literature festivals are actually all about empathy. They're about taking yourself out of your own experience and connecting you to something else. So it seems to me that a good festival director, regardless of gender, carries that value somewhere at the heart of what they do. I just want to throw that in there.
That's fabulous. Bilis, what Elin said. So on one hand, all our festivals try and showcase diversity. On the other hand, most nation governments today are looking at a unipolar understanding of the world, which is, the strong man, one kind of uniform culture, bringing everybody together to be able to determine under one philosophy, one fact. And all of us tend to push back on that. So where do you see this going? Where do you see this push and conflict sort of going to land up?
Who is that question for?
Was the question? Yeah.
Yeah, that was for you, Vilis. Can you hear me?
Okay. It's a very, very wide question. And to me, I think the role of the government in terms of the festival, or festivals in general, or literature in general, ideally would be not to get involved at all. But unfortunately, because I think our festival and a lot of other festivals are closely tied in with the state due to funding issues, or due to the, like Anomaa said, the censorship board, which likely isn't the case in Latvia, but I know that in a lot of countries, things that are said publicly have to go through different filters. So for our festival, I think for a lot of festivals, that's the part of their reason of their existence, is to avoid these filters, or find a way around these filters, which was particularly important for Latvia in the Soviet era. So under a more authoritarian regime, it was during poetry readings and literature that people found a way to go around these filters. Now, luckily for us, it's not really such a big issue, but still having a festival having people come from elsewhere helps us kind of move the needle a bit and maybe influence the discourse that's going on, and that's kind of being influenced, or is being tried to be influenced from above as well.
Ilke, in the event that festival funding wasn't tied up to ticking the box, key themes, diversity, gender specific, LGBTQ, would you program your festival differently?
No, no, absolutely not. I think it's what we want is a multiplicity of voices. And it's the nuance that we're looking for. It's the different story that we can still relate to. And I think the more diverse the voices are, what you often see in a very particular story, very specific, or often located is geographically very specifically or in a specific time. If it is good literature, you can relate to it, and I think this is something what we are looking for, and this is something that we want to what we present, and I would do it regardless of any boxes that need to be ticked.
Anomaa, last words. Again, given that you're in Jaffna, which is just still going through its process of healing, of understanding everything that's happened, and the film festival that you've been doing, bringing together people, creating a crossroad for different voices to come together. Do you see that changing completely because of this new digital paradigm?
I don't see a complete change, but as I mentioned earlier, one of the key objectives of the festival was keeping the physical space open for this dialogue between the south of the country and the north of the country. And not only that, though Sri Lanka is a very small island, we had a program called Cinema on Tour with the Goethe Institute Sri Lanka, that we took some of the films from the Jaffna Festival to the remote villages, especially children and youth audiences. We were targeting especially female audiences. We were taking some films in a traveling program after we closed Jaffna Festival. So because of the situation now, it was really important because we have, as a developing country, we have problems with the internet bandwidth, connectivity, everything. So digital space is not open for everybody. So even like small villages where that we had 100 people sitting watching a film. So with this situation, we cannot do that. That part is a major part of the festival. But on the other hand, as I said earlier, the digital space has opened up audiences beyond the physical borders, especially with the diaspora, which is also divided by the language, the Sinhalese speaking and Tamil speaking. So we have got new audiences joining us in Europe, in South Asia, in Pacific, Middle East. So that way that we are happy, but keeping the physical space is going to be a challenge, not only because of the pandemic and the health issues, the safety issues, but because of the funding mainly. Like in Sri Lanka, we don't have state funding for art and culture events. So we entirely depend on private donors, a little bit of CSR, cultural institutions, and some diplomatic missions and so on. So, and due to the pandemic, the main key funders of the festival, the private donors, so their contribution is going to be minimum. And because of that, as a festival, we are challenged. And the other problem, more than literary festivals, a film festival faces is when you go digital, like you have to geo-block because all the international festivals are about current and new films. We have 2-3 competitions open for debut films, for international short films, Sri Lankan short films, like that. So then sometimes, we may have to think of curation part where without focusing on only on the current part, maybe that more retrospective, bringing in more retrospectives and things like that, because the moment that you geo-block film screening, streaming becomes like, you are losing audiences. So those are the problems that we are going to face, because newest films, we have restrictions with that. So we have to think of curating, and we have to think of other ways of connecting to the remote audiences that we are going to lose in the future.
Fascinating. Well, I think each one of you need to get an award for continuing to barrel on despite all the odds that we face. People think that this is the glamour side of the world, arts and entertainment, little knowing the kind of heartbreak and struggle that one puts in every day in getting the show on the road. Anomaa and Elin, Vilis, Ilke, thank you so very much for joining us. Apologies for jumping in and out, but that's the nature of the beast today. That's our new reality, where we fall off the planet every now and then reappear like magic. Suraj, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Thank you, Anne, Anomaa, Elin, Ilke, and Bilis for this wonderful session. More power to each one of you to keep going with your festivals and promoting literature and arts. And thank you, Sanjoy, for being a fabulous moderator. We're really sorry for the connectivity issues you were facing, but despite of that, thank you for driving the conversation so well. And thank you all, you lovely people, for watching and being a great audience. We hope you all enjoy this conversation and will join us for another such roundtables where directors from around the world will join us to discuss and share their views on similar topics. Thank you once again. Apologies for the tech issues, and see you soon.
In these times during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं, और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं, और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.